37 seconds. That's all it took for Will Smith to destroy a 30-year career. One joke, one slap, one moment that changed everything. But Joe Rogan says we're all looking at this completely wrong. While the world was busy picking sides, Team Will or Team Chris, Rogan was digging deeper, and what he found will make you see this whole situation differently. Let's get the facts straight first. March 27th, 2022, the 94th Academy Awards. Chris Rock is presenting the award for Best Documentary. He looks over at Jada Pinkett Smith, Will's wife, and makes this joke. Now, for context, Jada has alopecia. It's a medical condition that causes hair loss. She'd been open about her struggles with it. She'd shaved her head because of this condition. So when Chris Rock made that G.I. Jane joke, referencing Demi Moore's character who had a shaved head, it hit different. You can see it on Jada's face immediately. She rolls her eyes. She's clearly not amused.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
Will Smith? At first, he's laughing. You can see him chuckle, but then something changes. Maybe he sees his wife's reaction. Maybe something clicks in his head. What happens next shocked the world. Will Smith gets up from his seat, walks all the way up to the stage. Chris Rock sees him coming and even leans forward a bit, maybe thinking Will's coming up to say something funny. Instead, Will slaps him hard, right across the face.
That was a nice one. Okay, I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow.
Chris Rock, to his credit, tries to keep the show going. That was the greatest night in the history of television, he says, but you can tell he's shaken. Later that same night, Will Smith won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in King Richard. He gets up, gives this emotional speech about protecting family, about being a protector. He apologizes to the Academy. He apologizes to the other nominees, but he doesn't apologize to Chris Rock. Not that night. The apology to Chris came the next day on social media, but by then, the damage was done. The consequences came fast and hard. Will Smith resigned from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The Academy banned him from attending any of their events for 10 years. His career took a massive hit. Movie projects got shelved. His reputation, built over decades, got seriously damaged. But here's where it gets interesting. The reaction from the public was split. Some people called Will Smith a hero. They said he was defending his wife. They said Chris Rock crossed a line by making fun of a woman's medical condition. They said Will did what any real man would do. Others called it toxic masculinity. They said Will Smith showed the worst kind of fake masculine behavior. They said he let his ego control him instead of handling it like an adult. And that's where Joe Rogan comes in. Joe Rogan has talked about this incident multiple times on his podcast, and his perspective cuts right to the heart of what this is really about. According to Rogan, what we saw that night wasn't just a slap. It was the result of years of pressure, years of trying to maintain an image, years of what he calls performative masculinity.
But Chris says a joke around
G.I.
Jane 2, looking forward to it, very mild, just laughed, and even said, come on, that was nice. And then Will Smith initially laughs,
yes,
but it looked like Jada was upset. And so Will changes his tune.
Here's Rogan's argument, broken down. First, he says Will Smith was caught between two worlds. On one hand, you have the traditional masculine expectation. Defend your woman, don't let anyone disrespect your family, be the protector. On the other hand, you have the modern world where physical violence in response to words is completely unacceptable, especially in professional settings. Rogan points out something crucial. Will Smith's first reaction was to laugh at the joke. He wasn't immediately offended. It was only when he saw his wife's reaction that something switched in his brain. Rogan suggests this shows it wasn't really about defending Jada. It was about maintaining his image as a husband, as a man, as someone who doesn't let his family get disrespected. Second, Rogan talks about the performative aspect. The slap wasn't done in private, it wasn't done backstage. It was done in front of millions of people, on live television, at the biggest event in Hollywood. If this was really about protecting his wife's honor, why make it such a public spectacle? Rogan's theory, Will Smith felt like he had to prove something. Not to his wife, not to Chris Rock, to the world, to show that he's still that tough guy from Philadelphia, that he's not soft, that he won't be disrespected.
Sit there quivering, saying,
With
keep
anger.
my wife's name out of your fucking mouth. And everybody's just gonna sit there in the shit that you just took on the table.
But here's the problem with that kind of thinking, according to Rogan. It's not real masculinity. Real masculinity is self-control. Real masculinity is handling conflict without violence. Real masculinity is being secure enough in yourself that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Let's dive deeper into this concept of fake masculinity because it's central to understanding what really happened that night. Fake masculinity, according to critics, is when men perform masculine behaviors not because they're necessary or right, but because they feel pressured to maintain an image. It's masculinity driven by insecurity rather than confidence. Real masculinity, at least according to this argument, comes from a place of inner strength. It's about making decisions based on what's right, not what looks tough. It's about having the self-control to walk away from fights you don't need to have. It's about being secure enough in yourself that you don't need external validation. Fake masculinity is the opposite. It's reactive, it's emotional, it's driven by fear. Fear of looking weak, fear of being disrespected, fear of not living up to some image of what a man should be. When you look at Will Smith's actions through this lens, a different story emerges. Here's a man who spent decades building an image, the fresh prince from Philly who made it big, the family man, the protector, the guy who handles his business. But what happens when that image gets threatened? What happens when someone makes fun of your wife on national television and everyone's watching to see how you'll respond? According to the fake masculinity theory, that pressure to maintain the image becomes overwhelming. You can't just let it slide, because then people might think you're soft. You can't just handle it privately, because that doesn't send the message you want to send. You have to do something public, something dramatic, something that shows everyone you're not to be messed with. The problem is, that's not strength. That's weakness disguised as strength. That's letting other people's opinions control your actions. That's being so insecure about how you're perceived that you make decisions based on maintaining an image rather than doing what's actually right. But let's be fair to the other side of this argument. A lot of people defended Will Smith's actions, and their points are worth considering. Comedy has always pushed boundaries. Comedians have always made jokes that some people find offensive. That's part of the job. But when does a joke cross the line from being edgy to being cruel? Jada Pinkett Smith has been open about her struggles with alopecia. It's not just about vanity or fashion choices. It's a medical condition that has caused her real emotional pain. She's talked publicly about how difficult it's been to lose her hair, how it's affected her self-image, how it's been a source of genuine suffering. So when Chris Rock makes a joke about her appearance, especially about something directly related to her medical condition, is that just comedy? Or is that cruel? The defenders of Will Smith say there's a difference between making jokes about people's choices and making jokes about their medical conditions. They say there's a difference between punching up at powerful people and punching down at someone's vulnerabilities. But Rogan goes deeper than just the comedy debate. He looks at the psychology behind Will Smith's reaction and finds something more troubling. According to Rogan, the real issue isn't whether the joke was appropriate or not. The real issue is how Will Smith has been handling his personal life and the pressures that built up to that moment. Rogan points to Will Smith's own admissions about his marriage. Will and Jada have been very public about their relationship struggles. They've talked about having an open marriage. Jada had a relationship with her son's friend while she and Will were separated. They've aired their personal business on their talk show, Red Table Talk. Rogan suggests that all of this public discussion of their private life put Will in an impossible position. Here's a man who's trying to maintain this image of being a strong husband and father while simultaneously having his personal struggles played out in public. When Chris Rock made that joke, it wasn't just about alopecia, it was about all of it. It was about the fact that everyone in that room knew about Will's marriage problems. Everyone knew about the separation. Everyone knew about Jada's relationship with August Alsina. From Rogan's perspective, Will Smith didn't slap Chris Rock because of a joke about hair loss. He slapped him because of years of accumulated embarrassment, frustration, and emasculation that all came to a head in that moment. The joke was just the trigger. The real explosion had been building for years. This incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a specific cultural moment where discussions about masculinity are more complicated than ever. Traditional masculine roles are being questioned. The idea that men need to be protectors, that they need to be physically strong, that they can't show vulnerability. All of that is being challenged. At the same time, there's a counter movement that says some of these traditional values are important, that men should protect their families, that there are times when physical response is appropriate, that the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. Will Smith found himself caught in the middle of this cultural war. He's a man from an older generation trying to navigate modern expectations while maintaining traditional values. The result was a perfect storm. The traditional part of him said he needed to defend his wife. The modern part of him knew that violence wasn't the answer. The celebrity part of him knew that millions of people were watching and judging. Instead of finding a balanced response that honored all of these considerations, he defaulted to the most primitive reaction: physical violence. Rogan argues that this shows how confused our culture has become about masculinity. We're giving men mixed messages. Be strong, but not too strong. Defend your family, but don't use violence. Stand up for yourself, but don't be aggressive. The result is men who don't know how to respond appropriately to challenges because they're trying to navigate contradictory expectations. What would you have done? Drop a comment below and let me know. Would you have stayed in your seat? Would you have handled it differently? And if this video opened your eyes to something new, hit that subscribe button.